Okay, today we're going to work on factoring trinomials where the leading coefficient, the x squared coefficient, isn't 1. The last lesson we just did, we started out and it always just said x squared, okay, and we knew that broke down into x and x, right? Like this. Uh, x and x times x always gave us that x squared term, but now there might be a coefficient on one of these or both of these that's different than 1, okay, because there's a number here that's different than 1. So let's take a look at this warm-up problem first, which says, okay, the array of 3 rectangular solar panels has an area of 3x squared plus 21x plus 36. The height of the array is x plus 3. What is the length of the array? Now, this is going to be something that you'll come to find out at the last problem, but there's 3 of them and they have the same measure, right? So check it out. We should be able to have some measure here on the bottom times this to get a polynomial, and then you're going to get that 3 times. So this should actually be 3 times bigger than the polynomial, the trinomial that makes one of them. And in fact, you can see if I write this down, if I wrote 3x squared plus 21x plus 36, you can see that actually we can factor a 3 out of all of these. All of these numbers are multiples of 3. And if you do that, you say, okay, I'm going to pull a 3 out front. And then when I factor this by dividing by 3, we're left just with x squared. And this right here divided by 3 is 7x. And this right here divided by 3 is 12. Okay? And of course, that 3 will have to stay in front, but now we can break it down into the 2 binomials that make it. And they already told us one of them. We know what the height was. The height was x plus 3. So if we have one of them being x plus 3, we simply need to figure out what's the other one. And since we already factored the 3 out here in front, what we're really doing is breaking just this down, and now we've got an x squared there, so it's going to be x times x. We know that's an x, okay? And we need a number here that multiplies with positive 3 to give us positive 12, and that's got to be positive 4, and that's factored. Okay, so sometimes there's a number that you need to first factor out. It could just be a constant value that you're factoring out, or it could be some kind of monomial with an x in it. Okay, anyway, that's that. And check it out. This is some notes that we've got here for this lesson. Okay, it says you can write some trinomials in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, right, as 2 binomials. Like we can break it down, and sometimes this number that's here, it is not just a common number that can factor out like this 3 factored out of all of them, leaving just x squared. Okay, sometimes it breaks down differently. You can look at this one right here, and you can say, oh, that one's a 6, but these are not both multiples of 6, so it's not going to work like that. Okay, so consider this. This 23x can really just be written as 2x plus 21x, right? Those two to go together to be 23x. Now don't worry about how you know exactly how to split it apart. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But if you do that and you think of these first two, 6x squared plus 2x, as a binomial that you're going to factor out a monomial from, we can divide them both by 2, and we can divide them both by x. They both have an x and they both have a 2 in there. So the 2x is divided out, and then you already have practice on what's left. If you divide this by 2x, what are you left? Well, 6 divided by 2 is 3, and x squared divided by x is x, so 3x there. If you divide this by 2x, well, 2x divided by 2x is 1, so you get a 1 there. Okay? And we can do the same thing here. What's the biggest thing we can factor out? Well, there's no x's here, so we can't factor an x out, but they are both multiples of 7, the numbers, so we can factor a 7 out. This divided by 7 is 3x, this divided by 7 is 1. Notice what you get. 3x plus 1 here and 3x plus 1 here. That means one of the binomials is 3x plus 1. The other one is this piece, 2x, and this piece plus 7. Those two binomials will multiply together to be this trinomial. Okay. Don't worry, you're not expected to know this yet. You're just seeing how it works. Okay. Now, just like I said, how would you know that 23x is supposed to be 2x and 21x? How would you know that? Well, notice this. We're going to take this leading number, that a, that coefficient in the front, 6, and this constant at the end, 7. 6 times 7 is 42. And we're going to list the factors of 42, and I can do it over here on the side. 1 times 42, 2 times 21, 3 times 14, 6 times 7, okay? And we need to find two of them that will add up to 23. Which ones add up to 23? Right there. That's how you break it down into 2x and 21x, okay? So this example suggests that to factor a trinomial in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, you look for the factors of the product of a times c. A is that leading coefficient times c. If you multiply them together and you get the number, like we did here, 6 times 7 is 42. That is what we need to factor, listing all the factors of 42, and find what two of them add up to be this middle number. Ooh, fancy. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get good at this. This is an important skill, and in fact, if you can master this well, then you're not only going to do well on our final assessment, but you are going to do well in future math classes as well. Okay, so let's start to do this. Let's see what they've got to offer. Okay, let's check out how they did this problem. They're saying when AC is positive, if you take this polynomial, this trinomial, and they say what is the factored form of it, you take A, 5, you take C, 2, 5 times 2 is 10, and that number is a positive number, okay? So find the factors of AC, A times C, 5 times 2, that sum up to be this middle number, 11. Since AC is 10, and BC is 11, we need to find positive factors of 10 that have a sum of 11. So what numbers make 10? 1 times 10, that adds to 11. 2 times 5, that adds to 7. We want it to add to 11. So we want 1 and 10. Okay? So we're going to now rewrite this like this. We're going to rewrite bx. This 11x, we're going to write it to be 1x and 10x, these numbers up here that we picked. Okay? So we say 5x squared plus 1x plus 10x plus 2, and we do these two together. What can you factor out of here? Well, we can factor out the x. There's an x here and an x here. The numbers don't have anything you can factor out. So we just have an x. This divided by x is 5x. This divided by x, 1x, or just x divided by x is 1. And here, what can we divide out? Well, these are both multiples of 2, so you can pull a 2 out. This divided by 2 is 5x. This divided by 2 is 1. Notice what you get in the middle. If you did it right, you'll get a binomial here and here, and that's going to be one of them. This put together with this will be the other one. Yeah? Now it says on here on the left, well, the process work of instead of writing 1x, you wrote 10x first. Okay? They said, yes, you can rewrite this as an alternate expression. I'm going to show you that instead of just reading it over here. What if you wrote 5x squared and put the 10x first? Oops. Sorry, I'm glitching out. 10x plus 1x plus 2. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to group them. We're going to group these two together. We're going to group these two together, and we're going to see what we can factor out. And what can you factor out of this? Well, we can divide these both by 5, and we can divide an x out. So we can get 5x out. Okay? So we get 5x. And what's left inside there? Well, this divided by 5x is x. Excuse me, sorry, x. And this divided by 5x is 2. Okay? Now, what can we factor out of here? Well, this is just 1x or x. and this is 2. It doesn't appear that there's anything that can be factored out. And so, if you can't factor anything out, it's a 1. And that means that everything inside stays what it is, because it's only got a common factor of 1. Okay? 1x and x are the same here. Okay? What does that mean? Well, first of all, we've got an x plus 2 here. That's great. That's one of the binomials. And for the other binomial, we're looking for this piece here, 5x, and this piece here, plus 1. So 5x plus 1. And, by the way, that was what we did when we said instead of writing 1x first, we wrote 10x first. And so it still broke down. The binomials popped out in the opposite order, but they still are the same thing. There's the x plus 2 right there, and there's the 5x plus 1 right there. Wow. So it doesn't matter how you write them down, but you do need to say a times c, find that number, and then do all the factors of that number and find out which one combines to be your middle b value. Okay? So let me erase this. And you're going to have a got it problem that you're going to need to do. By the way, in case it was unclear, your final answer is the factored pair of binomials right here. Okay? So here's your got it problem. What's the factored form of 6x squared plus 13x plus 5? And then the question is, just for reasoning, you're going to first do that and see what you get there, and then you can think about this. If in ax squared plus bx plus c, suppose ac was positive, this times this gave you a positive number, but b was negative. What do you know about the factors of ac? Hopefully you'll understand what to do there. But right now, you're going to pause it, and the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to solve this. Okay? Multiply a times c, give the factors of that, and find which one to add to this. And then take this and write it as 2 different monomials and factor it out. Okay? Pause it. You'll see what it looks like in a minute, but you should try and identify how to do it based on what they just did up here. So instead of just watching how it goes, relook at this and see what they did there. Then try it before you just give up and watch the solution without trying. Okay? So pause the video now. Okay, so what I want to do first, I want to take a times c, 6 times 5, and I get 30. 6 times 5 is 30. So what are all the factors of 30? Well, we've got 1 times 30. We've got 3 times 10. And we've got 5 times 6. We don't need to list 6 times 5. That's the same as 5 times 6. Those are the 2 numbers we need are already there. Oh, and I forgot, sorry, 2 times 15. Oops, if you forget one, it might be the one you needed. 2 times 15. Okay? Now, which 2 add together to be 13? That b value right here. Well, these 2 add together to be 13. Okay, so what are we going to do then? Well, what we're going to do is, we can get these other ones out of here. Okay. What we're going to do then is rewrite the original trinomial of 6x squared plus, instead of 13x, we're going to use these 2 numbers, 3 and 10. So we're going to write plus 3x plus 10x. Those 2 make 13x. That's the same as writing 13x, but we're going to now be able to use that to group them. And also at the end it says plus 5. Okay, so that is just this right here, except this part was written as 3x and 10x. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to group them. We're going to group this right here and this right here, and we're going to see what we can factor out of both of them. Okay, so what can we factor out of this? Well, the numbers we can both divide by 3, and they each have an x that we could divide out. So 3x is what's going to come out of there. Okay, and then what's going to be left if we pull the 3x out? Well, what is this divided by 3x? Well, 6 divided by 3 is 2, and x squared divided by x is x. We get 2x there. Okay, and what is this divided by 3x? Well, if it's exactly what you're dividing by, it's going to be 1, right? 3x divided by 3x is 1. So don't forget the plus 1. And we're going to do the same thing for here. What can you divide these by both by? Well, 10x and 5. Well, they both have 5 in it, so we can divide the 5 out. They don't both have x's, so we can't bring any x's out. So we've simply then just got, what's 10x divided by 5? 2x. What's 5 divided by 5? Remember, if you divide exactly by the same thing that's there, you get 1. And if you did it right, you see the same binomial twice. That's one of them. That's one of the two binomials, 2x plus 1. What's the other one? 3x plus 5. So our answer then is 3x plus 5 times 2x plus 1. That is our answer, my friends. And the reasoning here, it says for B, suppose A and C are positive, but B is negative. Okay, what does that mean? Well, that must have meant that this number was negative and this number was negative. So we would have to make the first number negative and the second number negative as well. So the factors of AC would have to be two negative numbers. Okay? So instead of having 1 and 30, you'd have negative 1 and negative 30. Instead of 3 and 10, you'd have negative 3 and negative 10, etc. Yeah? Okay, let's keep going. There's only a few problems in this whole thing. Let's keep going. Okay, so for this problem, we've got AC being negative. We have one of these numbers is positive, one of them is negative. So when you multiply positive times negative, you get negative. What's the factored form of 3x squared plus 4x minus 15? Well, if we take A, 3, and C, negative 15, we get negative 45, right? So you need to find the factors of AC that have a sum of B, positive 4. Since AC is negative 45 and B is 4, we need to find factors of negative 45 that have a sum of 4. So we can list them, you know, one's positive, one's negative. We need to have one of each sign, in other words, if we've got a negative here. So 1 times negative 45, those combine to negative 44. Or we could put the negative on the 1 instead of the 45, negative 1 and 45, and we get a positive 44. Okay? 3 and negative 15 is negative 12. Negative 3 and positive 15 is positive 12. Okay? And 5 and negative 9 is negative 4. Negative 5 and positive 9 is positive 4. That's what we need. B is positive 4. So this is the one that we need. Okay? So remember what we did in the first one. It says, can we apply the steps from problem 1 to this problem? Yep, we sure can. And the goal is still to find the factors of AC that have a sum of B. Just because AC is less than 0, AC is negative, we just need to have one of each sign. The factors have to have different signs, okay? And we've determined that they need to have the signs of negative 5 and positive 9. So we take what we had, this trinomial, and we rewrite this value of 4x to be negative 5x plus 9x. These two go together to be the 4x, right? And now we look at these first two. We say, what can we factor out? Well, we have no common number we can factor out, but we can factor out an x. We pull an x out. This is what remains. Here, what can we divide out? Well, these are both multiples of 3, so we can pull a 3 out. And what are we left with? This divided by 3 is this. This divided by 3 is this. That's from an earlier lesson. You need to know how to do that. And notice we get 3x minus 5 inside. That's one of the factors. What's the other factor? X plus 3. There you go. Okay. Your got it problem is, excuse me, what is the factored form of 10x squared plus 31x minus 14? Remember, you're going to take A times C, multiply them together, and then find out the two numbers, list all the factors of it that you can multiply together to make A times C, and then which set of those add up to this number 31. And once you have that, that'll be the coefficient on the x for here and here. Just like you take this and you turn it into that and that. Okay? So pause the video now, try that, and when you think you have the proper answer, and you can check it by foiling to make sure it goes back right, but when you think you have the proper answer, unpause the video and check it against my solution. Pause it now. Okay, so when we do A times C, A is 10, C is negative 14. So what we're doing is listing the factors of negative 140 that will add together to be 31. Okay, so I always like to start out with 1 times the number, 1 times negative 140. Or another way you could do it is you could say, I know that we need to subtract them. So we need to subtract them. This is something we learned last lesson. I'm just going to list them once, and we say we need, since there's going to be a positive and a negative, we need to subtract them to be 31. I'll show you that too, because that's also a good way of doing it. Okay, 1 times 140, 2 times 70, 3 times anything? Nope. The digits of this don't add up to a multiple of 3, so you can't do 3. Can you do 4 times anything? Yeah. I can double this number and take half of this and still have whole numbers. So 4 times 35. And haha, I'm going to stop there. Well, we could go, we could say 5 times 28, etc. But I already can see right here, those two are going to be subtract to 31. Okay. Now, which one do we want to have be the negative? Well, we need more positives left over, so the bigger one's got to be positive. So what we've got is, we should have is negative 4 and 35 are our two numbers that will multiply to negative 140 and will add up to 31. Okay, so what I just did there is I said, I'm just going to list the positive factors and say, because we know that we're going to get a negative, we need to subtract. Okay, so what do? We write our original trinomial, 10x squared, but for the middle term, 31x, we're going to write it as negative 4x and positive 35x, which hopefully you can see add together to be this right here. Okay? And finally, we've got to put that constant at the end of minus 14. Okay? Get that out of there just for confusion's sake. All right, so then what we're going to do is we're going to group them. We're going to group this and this, the first two, and this, the last two, and what can we factor out? Well, here, the 10 and the 4, we can factor out a 2, and they each have a single x we can get out, so we can get a 2x out. We pull a 2x out of there, and then what do we have left? Well, whatever we get remaining when we divide each term by 2x. So if we divide this by 2x, we get 5x. And if we divide this by 2x, negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Next divided by x is just 1, so negative 2. And you can always just verify it by saying, does this times this give me that? Yep, it does. Okay. Now, what can we factor out of here? Well, these are both multiples of 7. There's no x's in this one, so we can't get x's from both. So we can just pull out a 7. So we say it's got to be a positive 7. And got to be positive because this leading number is positive, so we're going to keep that as positive, okay? So if we divide them both by 7, we've got 35x divided by 7 is 5x, negative 14 divided by 7 is negative 2, and if we did it right, we get the same thing inside twice. We do, 5x minus 2. So we can, that's one of the binomials, 5x minus 2. What's the other binomial? It's the two parts that got factored out. It's this part here, 2x, and this part here, 7. 2x plus 7. Sorry, that's a little bit messy. You can do better. X, gosh, why won't it right? Plus 7, sorry about that. That is our answer, friends. Yep. So again, when we have a negative number, we know we have one of each sign. And if you want to do it my way of just listing them out, instead of listing them out 1 and negative 45 or negative 1 and 45, we can just say 1 times 45 gives us the 45, and one of them's got to be negative. So which one that's negative would give us the right combination to add together to be our B value. And when we did this, making the 4 negative gives us the right combination to add together to positive 31. Okay, hopefully that made sense. Let's keep going, see what else we got. All right, so what we're doing here is we're just applying this rule, what we've been doing, to an actual problem. The area of a rectangle is described in algebraic terms as 2x squared minus 13x minus 7. What are the possible dimensions of the rectangle? Use factoring. Okay, well, how can you find the dimensions of the rectangle? Remember that the area is going to be, it's a fact of the rectangle's area as the product of two binomials. You're going to get a length and a width. You're going to do length times width. So you're going to have a binomial for the length and a binomial for the width. And when they multiply together, they're going to give you this trinomial. Okay? So that's the idea there. Now, let's see what we do. Well, we're going to find, first of all, we need to find AC. What is AC? AC is 2 times negative 7 or negative 14 right there. Okay? And we're going to find the factors of that that have a sum of B. What is B? Negative 13. A big clue here is that, see how AC is only one more than this? Then that means that we're probably going to get 1 times 14. Okay? So, if you list the factors out, you say, okay, remember, if we get negative 14 for AC, we're going to have one of each. So we can either have 1 and negative 14 or negative 1 and 14. 2 and negative 7 or negative 2 and 7. When you add these together, you get negative 13. These make 13. These make negative 5. These make 5. And of course, we want it to be, because B is negative 13, we want it to be this pair right here. Now, if you did it the other way, my way, that says we can just list, if AC is negative 14, we can say, well, what's the factors of 14? 1 times 14, 2 times 7, and then we're subtracting, because since it's negative here, we got negative, it must have been a positive times a negative, and so we're going to add a positive and a negative together, and they're going to cancel out, and it'll subtract them. So we're looking at that, we say which two subtract to negative 13, or which two subtract to the 13, it's these two, and we need to put a negative on one of them. So since this says negative 13, we want the bigger number to be negative, and out of 1 and 14, the bigger one is 14, so we want that one to be the negative. And you can see that that matches with what they had here, which is a positive 1 and a negative 14. Okay, so now we rewrite bx, we write this to be using this number and this number as coefficients for two different parts. Oops. So instead of writing the original polynomial 2x squared minus 13x minus 7, you're going to take this piece and you're going to write it in two parts that have the two coefficients here, 1x or x and negative 14x. Those will go together to be negative 13x. But now we can then group them and factor out common factors. Okay, so what's a common factor of 2x squared and x? X. That's the number they pulled out. Okay, and dividing this by x, you get that. Dividing this by x, you get that. What's the common factor of these? We'll see how that's a negative number and that's a negative number. Since they're both negative, pull out a negative. Okay, that'll leave you with the same thing in the middle. So you pull out, what can you divide them both by? Negative 7. That negative 7's there. This divided by negative 7 is 2x. This divided by negative 7. Negative 7 divided by negative 7 is 1. What you get resulting is the same thing twice, 2x plus 1. That's going to be one of them, and x minus 7 is going to be the other one. Yep, so the possible dimensions are 2x plus 1 and x minus 7. I love these. They're actually quite fun. Okay. Oh. So you're going to do this got it problem right now. You're going to find the dimensions of the rectangle, what two binomials will multiply together to be the area of the rectangle, which is this. Okay, we're going to use the methods we used above, and notice that since AC will be positive, you're going to have numbers that have the same sign, and this is what sign they'll have. Okay, so you'll have two positive numbers. Multiply that together, list all the factors, find which two add together to be 22, and you're on your way. Pause the video now and do that. Come back when you have the two binomials written like this as your answer. So pause the video now. Okay, so assuming you paused it and now we're back. First we need to do, what is 8 times 15? What is A times C? What is A times C? Well, A times C is 120. 120. Okay, so we're listing all the factors of 120. And we can run through them all. 1 times 120, that adds up to 121. That's way far away from what we want, which is this. Okay, so I know essentially that by looking at it, and you might get good at this eventually, you can list them all out, but I can see that one of them, since it ends in 0, is going to be 10 times whatever the number is with the 0 drop, 10 times 12, and that adds up. 10 plus 12 is 22, so that adds up to what we need. So I'm going to write that. I didn't need to list them all out in that case because I already knew what two numbers multiply to be 120 and add to 22. I could see it because I knew that 120 breaks down into 10 times 12. Okay, so I'm going to write it as 8x squared plus 10x plus 12x. Those are the two numbers that I had. Sorry, my pen is having a hard time writing today. Plus 12x. And then my constant that was at the end plus 15. Okay? And then what I can do here is, what I should do here is I should group the first two terms and the last two terms separately. Okay? And figure out what can I factor out of here. Well, I can divide these both by 2. 8 and 10 both divide by 2, and I can get an x out of both of them. So I can pull out a 2x. Okay? And then I got to figure out what's left if I divided them each by 2x. Okay? So this divided by 2x is 4x. And 10x divided by 2x is 5. If you don't get a negative number, then you got to put the plus in between. Okay? And what can I factor out of here? Well, I can't get an x out of both of them because this doesn't have any. But I can divide these both by 3. So I can say, I can pull out a positive 3. And then what's left? Well, this divided by 3 is 4x. This divided by 3 is 5. And did I do it right? Well, we got the same binomial inside twice. That's a great sign. And I'm going to write the answer in red. The first binomial can be what I found inside of both of them, 4x plus 5. And the second binomial can be what we factored out, this 2x here and this plus 3, so 2x plus 3. And that, my friends, is the answer. 4x plus 5 times 2x plus 3. Fun. Actually, it seems like it's a bunch of work, but it actually becomes a logical, like, oh yeah, I get what's going on, if you do a bunch of them. You gotta trust me on this. Gotta do a bunch of them. Okay? We got one more, and it's about what I talked about at the beginning, which is sometimes you need to factor out a common monomial before you can factor the trinomial down into binomials. So let's look at that. So this just says, to factor a polynomial completely, and sometimes even just to do it right, otherwise it becomes really difficult to know what to do, you first factor out the greatest common factor. If you look at the coefficients and they all have a common number you can divide, or they all have a variable, the same variable in all the terms, you're going to be able to factor something out first, the greatest common factor. Okay? Then you're going to factor the remaining polynomial until it's written as the product of polynomials that can't be further factored. And once you factor a GCF out, that's got to sit in the front of anything that you factor. It's always got to show there, okay? So let's do it. If we look here, factoring out a monomial first, we look at this and we say, what can we factor out of here? Well, this doesn't have any x's in it, so we're not going to be able to pull any x's out, but they all are multiples of 3, okay? Factor out the greatest common factor of the trinomial terms. This trinomial, the trinomial that remains is just like what we did in the other problems. That's what this is saying right here, okay? And taking a look at this, factor out, they're all multiples of 3. So we're going to factor a 3 out and be left with this, okay? So notice that that 3 has got to stay in front, okay? Always. Otherwise it won't equal the same all the way down. But once we do, now we're dealing with this. So what do? We say, okay, I need to take A times C. I'm going to mark them. Here's A, here's C. We get a positive 24 right there, okay? But because the middle term here is negative, we need to have negative numbers. We need to have the factors of 24 where they're both negative, okay? So negative 1 and negative 24, remember, we're going to add them together. They add together to negative 25. Or it could have been negative 2 times negative 12. They add to negative 14. Or it could have been negative 3 times negative 8. They add to negative 11. Oh my God, that's what it is. Yay. Or finally listing the rest of them out. Negative 4 times negative 6 also gives you 24, but they only sum to negative 10. And we needed negative 11, so what we needed were these two. So keeping that 3 in front right here, we can say, writing this trinomial, 6x squared minus 11x plus 4, we're going to take this part underlined in green and we're going to break it into 2 parts. Those 2 parts having the numbers that we have right here, and they still add up to negative 11x, okay? And now, you notice that there's brackets here. Hopefully you know that brackets go around when there's parentheses on the inside, okay? So what they're saying is, we're going to group basically like this. We're going to say, let me erase this mark real quick. Okay, we're going to group this and this, and what can you factor out of both of those? The 3x right there, okay? And we're going to group this and this. What can we factor out? We can factor out a negative 4. In fact, if this first term here is negative, we're going to pull the negative out and turn it into a positive one like that, okay? And so if you pull out negative 4 from this, you get that. Pull out negative 4 from this, or divide this by negative 4, you get that. And notice you get 2x minus 1 on both. Great, that's one of them. 3x minus 4 is the other one, and that 3 sitting in front has to be there too, and that becomes your answer. Yep. Okay, so to finish this up, we are going to do this got it problem, and then we're done. And the question here, what's the factored form of this? What you're looking for is there a common factor that you can divide all 3 of these terms by? This, and this, and to pull out front like we did the 3, okay? Then see what's left and factor it like I taught you. Pause the video now, do that. When you come up with your answer, you're going to unpause it, okay? So pause it right now and do that, and then unpause it when you have an answer. Please do this, okay? Because you're not going to get better at this just by watching me. You're going to get better by doing it yourself. So pause the video now. Okay, so when I look at these numbers right here, they're all multiples of 4. There's no x in this one, so I can't pull an x out of each one, so I can only pull a 4 out of each one, but I'm going to rewrite that then as 4 times, and now I'm going to divide each of these terms by 4. This, and this. What is 8x squared divided by 4? It is 2x squared. You can see that multiplied by 4 would become its original thing. What is negative 36x divided by 4? It is negative 9x. And what is negative 20 divided by 4? It's negative 5. Okay? So that's what we've got. We're going to continue to have that 4 sitting out front. And the question now is, what is A times C? What is 2 times negative 5? It's negative 10. Okay? So I'm going to do my way of doing it, where I say, what makes 10? 1 times 10. or 2 times 5. And if you subtract them, because since we have a negative here, that means we need to subtract them. Which two subtract to be 9? Well, these two subtract to 9. And which one needs to be negative? Well, we need negatives at the end. We need more negatives left over, so the bigger one's got to be negative. So we got to have a negative 10. Okay, so we then get, negative 10 and 1. Okay, so that means we're going to rewrite this as 2x squared, and we're going to use these two as the coefficients, 1 and negative 10x. So we're going to have positive 1x, or just positive x, and negative 10x. Those are going together to be that negative 9x that was here, and we got to keep the minus 5. Okay, and now we're going to group them. We're going to group these two together, and we're going to group these two together, and we're going to see what we can pull out. Okay, so I got to keep that 4 out front. I'm going to put some brackets here. And what can we divide out of 2x squared plus x? This doesn't have a coefficient bigger than 1, so we're not going to get a number out that's greater than 1, but we can get an x from both. So I'm going to pull out an x. So I'm going to say x times what's left. Well, 2x squared divided by x is 2x, and x divided by x is 1. Okay. What can we pull out of here? Well, they're both negative numbers. In fact, most importantly, this is negative, so we're going to pull out a negative something, and they're both multiples of 5, so we're going to pull out a negative 5. So I'm going to write minus 5, and then what do we have left when we divide by negative 5? Well, this divided by negative 5 is positive 2x, and this divided by negative 5 is positive 1. And as we hoped, we got the same thing inside twice. Okay, so that's going to be one of the binomials. X minus 5 is going to be the other, and this 4 sitting out front. So we've got then 4 times 2x plus 1, what was inside for both of them, and what was pulled out for both of the other ones, x minus 5. That, my friends, is not just the answer, but that is the end of the lesson. So I know that this seemed like a complicated bit of work, but hey, look, we're at the end of Algebra 1. You've put together a whole lot of knowledge in Algebra 1, and this is, of course, going to be challenging, but you made it through all the other stuff. You can make it through this too. I like this stuff. We can keep working problems. In fact, this is a great one to be doing IXLs for, because it'll just keep giving you more and keep giving you more and keep giving you more. And rather than thinking that you're going to be tired out by doing more and more and more, what you can think of is that you're going to be kind of energized to be getting it. Each one is going to be a little easier. Oh yeah, I get it. Oh yeah, I get it. And then finally you're going to be like, give me another one. I can do this now. I can do it. And so be encouraged by the little successes as it starts to fall into place. And instead of considering yourself done, consider that if you keep going, you're just going to get better and better and better until you're nailing this. Okay? We're going to have an extra practice week of review for this, but right now, just lock it in. So that truly is review. Okay? Good luck. Contact me with any problems that you need to know how to do. I'll talk you through them.